Well, let's just back it up to chapter 20, verse 13. Verse 13, this is Luke giving his account to his former slave master Theophilus, and he's just validating the ministry of Jesus Christ, that he is the Messiah, the Savior, and kind of showing Theophilus what is going on since the death and resurrection of Jesus, to prove to him that this whole Christianity thing, what they called the way back then, was real and actually validated by God. So verse 13, we're dealing now with Paul's third missionary journey, and it says here, then we went ahead to the ship and sailed to Assos, there intending to take Paul on board. For so he had given orders, intending himself to go on foot. So at this point again, Paul is now heading over land, not getting onto that boat. Verse 14, and when he met us at Assos, we took him on board and came to Myleene. Now if you remember, he was supposed to get on board that ship, but he got wind of the fact that the Jewish people that had gotten onto that ship, who were heading up to Jerusalem for the festival, they were going to throw him overboard and kill him. Okay, so he takes the land route rather. Interesting, there's a verse in the Old Testament that says, touch not mine anointed. Now, Paul was clearly anointed by God. Okay, and the verse that really backs that one up a lot is Elisha. And Elisha is walking along, and there are some youngsters who come out, and they start mocking him. And they start referring to the lack of hair on the top of his head. And I never said a word. And they start mocking and saying, hey, baldy, baldy, and there's some references there. It's a pretty deep reference as to what they're saying, but they're mocking his ministry as well. And he turns around and he calls out to God, and bears, Bible reports that bears come out of the woods and maul these youngsters. And it's a very it's one of those verses that you kind of walk in fear and trepidation on and with, because you don't want to start picking on and picking apart pastors and a person that has been appointed and anointed by God. Now,
Hi, Adam.
that's right. It's morning, Shane. And there is a difference between those that are appointed by God and then also anointed by God as a pastor. And we're going to deal with this a bit more in second service. But those that go to seminary doesn't necessarily mean that they're a pastor. If they're not anointed, you can have as many qualifications as you want. If you're not anointed for that position, man, you just got yourself a qualification. And I mean, I can still respect the fact that the person took the time and went and got the qualification, but it's no different to having a qualification in, say, mechanical engineering or anything else. It's a qualification. So, Paul at this point doesn't stand on that verse and say, oh, well, I'm anointed by God, I'm going to be protected. There's common sense as well in Paul's ministry right here. And at the same time, that common sense should extend into our lives as well as Christians. You don't want to go hauling through this canyon at night or at sundown doing 100 miles an hour and, oh, well, the deer aren't going to hit my car because God's got me covered. No, it doesn't work like that. Where are we at? Chapter 20 and verse, Acts chapter 20, verse 15. We sailed from there, and the next day we came opposite Chios. The following day we arrived at Samos, and we stayed at Trogyllium. The next day we came to Miletus, for Paul had decided to sail past Ephesus so that he would not have to spend time in Asia, for he was hurrying to Jerusalem, if possible, on the day of Pentecost. So Paul was on a mission, I mean, he wanted to get to a certain place at a certain time. Remember, he had taken that Nazarite vow, he had cut his hair. And my personal opinion was that he was heading to Jerusalem, and when he hit Jerusalem, the bang, I've arrived. And we see how it kind of falls through and falls apart later on, and that's why I say that it's my personal opinion. But this is now just tracking his progress. So you can look in the back of your Bible. Most of you have maps in the back of your Bible, and that will list Paul's missionary journeys. Okay. So now we're going to pick it up, verse 17. From Miletus he sent to Ephesus, and he called for the elders of the church. So this is now the elders of various churches. He's calling basically an elders meeting. Now this word elders over here, the word elder, pastor, and bishop are all derived from the same word. They are all the same ministry. But what it does do is, even though they're three different words, it gives you a deeper understanding of what their position is. Okay? So, for a elder, the term elder, that gives you the teaching or the idea that we are looking at the man in his humanness. Okay, what should an elder, a pastor, or a bishop be? What should this person have in order to fulfill this position? So the elder here is talking about a man in his physical life, and it's talking about an elder person, not just in years. Granted, in the years, there's definitely an advantage in the sense that he's walked through life and has got the wisdom of life. There's that little saying that when there's a younger man and an older man in the same room, the older man should never have to remind the younger that he's older, and the younger man should never forget it. Think about that. There's so much wisdom in experience, life experience. You can't get that from a book. You can't replace that. And then, so that's his position as far as years go. So it's calling for wisdom, both worldly wisdom or street smarts, if you want to call it that. And then it's also talking about his maturity in his walk. You can go to, say, Bible seminary, and you can go and put in 4 years of study. You can come up with a degree in theology, and yet if you haven't walked a walk as a Christian, because let's face it, when you go to seminary and you're in this enclosed, protected environment, everybody's a Christian, and you make friends with those people, so you're associating with Christians after work. The girl that you're going to date or the boy that you're going to date is probably from the same thing, so they're a Christian and they've all got these aspirations of we're going to go out and change the world for Jesus. And it's a very cocooned environment, it's a very protected environment. As soon as you get taken out of that and you get thrown to the wolves out in the real world, that's where the evidence of your walk comes in. And until you walk through those times, and I dare to venture and say, until you've had a period where you've actually fallen away and then come back, you're not ready to take the seat of, or the position of, a pastor, or any position of leadership in the church. You need that spiritual maturity, both good and bad. And I believe that the kind of going cold, having a winter season in your walk, is imperative, because how do you counsel or identify with somebody that comes up to you and says, you know, at one stage, man, I was on fire for God, I had the Jesus bumper sticker, the t-shirt across around my neck, and I was doing this, and now I'm just, everything's gone dead for me. How do you identify and counsel that person? So you need to go through it first. So that's the elder. Then this term bishop. The term bishop has been misused because some of our religions, and I'm talking all within, say, the broader band or the broader heading of Christianity, the term bishop, oftentimes the bishop is actually is higher than the pastoral position. Where do you find that in Scripture? It's not in Scripture. These are man-made things. Now, the term bishop talks about, and it's taken from the word an overseer. So that gives the position of what a bishop should be. And as I said, these three different positions all make up what a pastor should be. So the term bishop is to oversee the ministry. not lord over the ministry, not be, telling people what they should and shouldn't do. That's not what it is. A bishop, in that term, and overseeing a ministry, is to just recognize problems coming up in the church, and you are there serving the church in almost like in a protective type of position, role. And then last one of those three is pastors. Now this is the method in which you're going to apply this ministry. And the pastoral, the word pastor comes from a shepherd. So there's the pastoral ministry. And the pastoral ministry is simply looking after the sheep. And again, if you go back to what Jesus said to Peter, when Jesus spoke to Peter after Peter had kind of walked away and come back, Jesus said to him, "Hey, Peter, do you love me?" He said, "Yeah." It's okay. "Feed my lambs." Then he says to Peter, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter's like, "Lord, you know I love you." And then he says to him, "Okay, feed my sheep." I don't think Jesus made a mistake there with his verbiage. The verbiage, I think, is very, very, very important. You look at the majority of guys who've come up in the church that have successful ministries. No, I'll take it back. You look at the guys who have got successful ministries. They have a heart for the kids. Then it grows. Then they kind of move up and grow and go into the adult ministry. And I know for me, going back on this thing this weekend, I just realized how much I miss youth ministry. I love it. I miss it so much. And that's part and parcel of what this pastoral ministry should be. It's a shepherd, it's a leading, it's a feeding of the flock. So Paul at this time says, okay, he calls this elders meeting. This is interesting for me. Verse 18. And when they had come to him, these guys are in faraway places, so they've got to make a journey. It's not kind of just hop in your car and go down the road. It's going to take time because they're off work, they're away. I would suggest to you that the greatest ability in ministry is availability. Because when the person comes around and has got a problem, and you are willing to make yourself available at that time, that's huge. That speaks volumes to a person. And just as last week I was on a crunch for a job, and I was on a deadline, and a guy walked in, unexpected, put down my tools, sat down. I ended up spending 2 hours with this guy. I also didn't get my deadline. I missed my deadline. But that in itself, I honestly believe speaks volumes to a person. Now, you're probably sitting there and saying, "Oh, great, this doesn't really pertain to me." Second service, we're going to go into ministry. I'll touch on this just a little bit right now. For those of you that really know me, you know I'm not a people's person. I mean, for those, when you think back to when you first met me, how many of you guys took one look at me? He's strange. He looks funny. He speaks funny. Yeah, put both hands up. Chuck, why don't you? Thanks a lot.
You're speaking for all of us.
Yeah, great. But, and I know I'm not a people's person, and I know that's not my gifting or whatever it is. I haven't had an upbringing that's been a people's person type of upbringing. I spent part of my time in the military. When I came out of that, I hid myself in sports. I spent hours a day on my own, running, swimming, cycling kind of thing. I didn't have anything to do with people. I haven't really learned people skills. We had a couple walk in here the first time a couple of weeks ago. And as they walked in, I thought I recognized the man, and I called him by the wrong name. He's like, "What? Aren't you so-and-so?" And he said, "No." I said, "Oh, man, sorry, my mistake." And I said, "Well," and I turned to the wife and I said, "Well, we met last week." And she looked at me and said, "Sort of." That's not my calling. But at the same time, there are other people who've walked through these doors and they turn around afterwards, and I've heard, and they said, "You know what, I felt so welcome there because one of you guys stepped up and did what I'm not supposed to do."
And besides, think how many times the Lord has used people that weren't in their mind fit for that job.
Yep.
Moses is a good example. So that's really exactly your calling,
So
just not in your mind.
Please, Lord, no. I rebuke that word. But,
What did you say about wisdom earlier?
yeah, okay. Second service, we're really going to hit this calling thing. And each one of us had got a specific role to play within the church. One of the guys on this weekend said to everybody, he said, okay, well, write the word church down. What's in the center of that word church? The letters U-R. That's the center of church, U-R. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, I like that one. And, I mean, if it wasn't for you, it'd be me on a stool. Not a pretty sight. And that would be all that this church is, would be. So, what we're talking about here applies specifically to each and every one of you. So here he calls his pastors meeting, and these guys come, and they arrive, they take time out. And then, Paul goes into what is maybe the first pastor's seminar, and he starts giving them details and instruction of what they are to be. And this is interesting where he starts off. He says, in other words, you guys have seen my walk. That's what he's saying to them. I tell you what, Paul, throughout his letters and things, he refers to himself a lot in the sense of, you've seen me, you've watched me, you bear witness. How many of us can write a letter in general to a bunch of people saying, okay, you know me. You know my walk. I mean, you think about it, it's pretty eye-opening statement. So Paul starts off there, from the first day that I came to Asia, in what manner I always lived amongst you, serving the Lord with all humility. If you're going to write about your humility, are you humble? It's a kind of a conflict. Now this tells me definitely here that he is writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. I don't believe he's just writing a letter to them. I don't believe any of his letters are just writings. In fact, in Peter's writing, in 1 Peter says that Paul's writings are the same as the Old Testament scriptures. He's telling us specifically that these letters are inspired by God. That's how much credence Peter puts onto this. And now remember something, Peter and Paul were at odds against each other. Paul had rebuked Peter publicly. So, I mean, in our humanness, for me, if Paul had rebuked me publicly, I would have probably written, blow Paul off his, what are his writings. He didn't walk with Jesus personally, but that's not what Peter does. Peter recognizes the authority of these words. So here, under the Spirit, Paul is talking about, and he's talking about his own walk, and he's talking about here, I've served the Lord with all humility. There's your first qualification if you want to get into ministry. And ministry is not just in the church. In fact, I'd say that's probably the last place. When Jesus gave instruction as far as ministry goes, he never, ever, ever said to anybody, go and join a church, go and become a deacon, elder, a pastor. He didn't do that. His instruction for ministry was go make disciples, and then the next instruction was, go and let your light so shine before all men, that they can see what you've got, desire that, and then glorify your Father in heaven. That's his instruction for ministry. So, humility. Then he goes on with many tears. You guys that are parents, you know about that verse. How many tears have you shed over your own kids? And it's exactly the same. Yes, Carl, many.
You can even count them anymore.
No. Remember those tear bottles we spoke about? The little tear bottles that the Jewish woman used to carry around their necks and just cry into? Your mom's got a gallon jug around for you. So the tears shed. And that is so true, because oftentimes when you are sitting back from a situation, that old saying, if you're in something, you can't see the wood for the trees. In other words, your situation is so big, you can see the wood, but you cannot see the tree that's standing right in front of you. And oftentimes in ministry, you're counseling somebody, or you've been down that route, and you're talking to them, and it's from a heartfelt desire that they don't go down the same path, not the same mistake. And yet you can see them not accepting the wisdom that comes from the Word, and you can see them making those mistakes. You can see the natural progression of where it's going to go. And you really, your heart beats for them. I mean, there's a guy here that we both know, and it's going down this route, and it's like, man, I'm so scared I'm going to wake up one morning and I'm going to hear God passed away. You know, that's where it's going to. And there are many, many, many tears in ministry. And trials, I fancy that. Hard times, testing, yeah. You step up, you're going to get a target put onto you. When you're in the combat zone, anybody that's got any sort of rank or authority doesn't wear any patches, any of the insignia showing where your rank is. When I was in the military, we used to go and watch. We used to go and watch the enemy for a long period of time, sometimes days at a time, and sit there and watch who's the person that everybody goes to. You'd first sit and watch, and you'd see, oh, there's a man there that, or there's 5 different men that a lot of people are going to. Then you start watching the 5 different men. Who are they going to? And then you start looking at that one man. Where's he going to? That's your target. That's ministry. You decide, like Joshua said, as for me and my household, we'll serve the Lord. You put that up in your house, and you just painted a big target on your house. And I guarantee you, everybody's going to come against you. From within your own family, oh, do we have to go to church? Do we have to do this? And it's going to get tough. Mark of the ministry. So forewarning you and telling you this is what's going to happen. Trial, which happened to me by the plotting of the Jews. Interesting, he was Jewish, and yet that's where the attacks came from. The moment he turned away from the Jewish faith, boy, that's where it came from. The moment you turn away from the world, that's where the attacks are going to come from, even in your own family. Verse 20, how I kept back nothing that was helpful, but I proclaimed it to you and taught you publicly and from house to house. In the secular lifestyle, in the worldly lifestyle, the last thing you want to show, bless you, the last thing you want to show somebody else, like say in the trades, like in the building trades, I don't want to make friends with somebody and then take them over, oh, okay, so this is how you do this, and here's a better technique, and why? Because a little while later, he's going to have all my tricks of the trade, he's going to apply them, his business is going to flourish, and what about mine? That's the secular way of thinking. Paul here is saying, I'm giving it to you all tricks of the trade, all my knowledge, everything. Doesn't matter if you supersede me. What was happening in those days is that when a scholar became noticed and he became what they call a rabbi, a teacher, he would develop his own philosophy. He would take the word and he'd study it, he'd break it down, and he'd develop his own philosophy. And then he'd get students to follow him, and he handpicked students. First of all, he tried to pick the smartest ones, and he handpicked them in such a manner that they would continue his philosophy, or what we call today his legacy. And that's how they did things. Paul's not doing that. He's saying, I'm not worried about whether you're going to follow me and continue my legacy. I'd rather that you knew everything and brought you closer to Christ. He's taking himself out of the picture. And how he did it in the synagogues, he did it on the street corners, he did it from house to house. In other words, he didn't care where he ministered. How many of us are in that position, especially with all these family reunions coming up, in the sense that you got your whole family and they come from all over the place, and I'm not going to go to church because, you know, it's family reunion time and that one doesn't go to church. And it's like you don't want to offend someone. I suggest you the family reunions right now are probably a huge time to be able to minister. It's an opportunity. When they go back and they leave you and they are not Christians, how many opportunities are there going to be for that individual to hear the word? If you're not going to give it to them, who is? So, verse 21, testifying to Jews and also to Greeks, repentance towards God and faith towards our Lord Jesus Christ. All he's saying right there is, I'm not teaching anything in depth or academical. It is what it is. Here's the gospel message. Verse 22, and see, now I go bound in the Spirit to Jerusalem. This next little bit is interesting. I'm going to read first, and then we'll come back to Jerusalem. Not knowing the things that will happen to me there, except that the Holy Spirit testifies in every city, saying that the chains and tribulations await me. But none of these things move me, nor do I count my life dear to myself, so that I may finish my race with joy and the ministry which I received from the Lord Jesus, to testify to the gospel of the grace of God. Paul here repeatedly has been warned time and time and time again, and we're going to see another warning right now, not to go to Jerusalem. Yet he's taken this Nazarite vow, and he's heading there for a specific festival, and like I said, he's there to go, and I'm going to show these guys, and I am going to preach to the Jews. But God said to Paul time and time again, you're not going to the Jews, you're going to the Gentiles. Perfect example of that is Jonah. Jonah got commissioned to go to the Ninevites. He hated the Ninevites because of their carnality. Yet, Jonah knew the power of God. And when he argues with God after the fact, he says to God, I knew you were going to do this, because he's sulking after the Ninevites get saved. I mean, that's the greatest revival that's recorded in the Bible. And he's sulking about it because all the Ninevites get saved. And he personally wanted God to judge the Ninevites. And that's why when God said, okay, go that direction, Jonah got in a boat and he headed west, as far away as he could get. But at the end of the day, Jonah ended up in Nineveh. He didn't have a choice. If God calls you to do something and you are ordained to do it, you are going to end up doing it. Paul here is deciding to go his own route, okay, regardless. Even though God keeps on talking to him through the Spirit. At this point, in verse 24, he turns around and he says, so what? Even if I die, this is what I'm called to do. Paul was in a unique place in the sense that his life was all together, packaged really neatly. He had a bright future. He was academically incredibly smart. He had mastered the Old Testament scriptures. The writings of Gamaliel, who was his teacher, his rabbi, Gamaliel said that the complaint that he has against Paul is there are not enough books to keep Paul interested. So Paul was a scholar of scholars kind of thing. Paul, his lineage also would ensure that he had a priestly role. So he was lined up to go places. When he meets with God on the road to Damascus, and he realizes that the power that he had received, basically because he was following God, he misused and persecuted Jesus or God through persecuting the Jews. Paul at that time must have been crushed. I can only imagine. I mean, he must have been absolutely crushed. And from then on, it's almost like he doesn't have a respect for his own life anymore. And he's just in the position of saying, you know what? If I die doing this, I die doing this. You look at how many times he got beaten and stoned and everything else. He gets stoned, he's left for dead. They come and pray for him. He gets up, he goes back into the same city. It's like the guy's got a death wish. No, he hasn't got a death wish. He's not wishing to die. He just has realized that he's not clinging fast to his own life. And he's also realized something, that if God has called him, which he has, he's not going to die before the mission is done. So, and then he talks about finishing his race, an analogy that he uses time and time again in Scripture. So verse 25, and indeed I know that that you all, tells me right there that Paul is Texan. Indeed that I know that you all, among whom I've gone preaching in the kingdom of God, will see my face no more. So here he's talking to these guys, and he's saying, I'm going to head on up, and I know I'm not coming back. He's fully aware that he is going to die. I mean, if I said to you this afternoon, hey, there's a mission out there in Lakey, and, go out there, but you're probably going to die this afternoon. How many would go? And a lot of us kind of think, oh, well, yeah, that's kind of far-fetched. No, I saw one of the pastors this weekend, and he was telling me that when he was in seminary, there was a guy from Uganda center of Africa. Uganda is a hectic place. And they've got these, call them gangs, and they're all marauding tribes. And what they do is they are so well armed and equipped from all the wars and things that are there, they'll just arrive in a couple of vehicles, typically pickup trucks, and there's like 15 guys on the back of the pickup truck. They've all got AK-47. They're all stoned out of their minds because they use a lot of drugs in order to get hyped up for war. And they'll just converge in on a town and just start shooting. They'll massacre everybody and they'll take what they can. And then they take the young boys, they take them back with them to train them up as soldiers. And they grab the little guys. I mean, literally from 8 or 9, they grab everybody else. They shoot, rape, and that's just what they do. So it's hectic. This guy, this pastor that I was speaking to, he'd made friends with this guy that had come out from Uganda, and they were at seminary together. And the one morning, this guy came over and he said, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm going back to Uganda." The pastor said, "Well, why?" He said, "Oh no, I've been given a church." And, "Oh, well, that's amazing. Wow. How come you've been given a church?" The rebels came in. They massacred everybody and they shot the pastor. This guy was going to a church where the pastor had just been murdered, and the possibility was that he would be murdered in the near future. But that's where I'm called, that's where I'm going. How many of us can say the same thing? This Bible's not easy. I don't know about you guys, but it really isn't easy. And verse 26. Therefore, I testify to you this day that I am innocent of the blood of all men. Now, we've just spoken about Paul, what he was doing before he was converted. Do you remember Paul was the one that was standing when Stephen was stoned to death? Paul is the one that gave the final vote. He was the one that cast the lot, okay, for Stephen to be stoned to death. Paul was the one that, when he was going up to Damascus, he had on his possession letters of authority from the council, the Sanhedrin, that wherever he found a Christian, he was entitled to arrest that Christian, bring them back for trial, and they were going to be put to death. He was scourging the Christian faith, this new movement, because they viewed it as an affront to the Jewish faith and also a threat. So that's what Paul's mission was. So Paul, having that blood on his hands, how can he go forward now and say here that I am innocent of the blood of all men? He's not talking about the physical. He's talking about the spiritual realm right here. And he's saying, wherever I have been, I haven't failed to tell everybody about Jesus Christ and the salvation therein. Pretty interesting the way that he uses that word. If he is innocent of the blood of all men because he's given out the gospel to all men, the flip side of that coin is if you haven't taken the opportunity to give out the gospel message to all men, then what are you guilty of? It's a pretty hard-hitting statement that he's making right there. There's a huge calling on each and every one of us. I don't think it's a calling, I don't even think it's a choice. And more than just a mouthpiece that we think spreading the gospel is, I don't believe in spreading the gospel by words. I really don't. A friend of mine back in California, Matt, he invited me out one night to go and they go witnessing on the pier in California down in Oceanside. And they would literally just go down and stand on the pier and position themselves down the pier up against the railing. And as people would come past, because a lot of people go walking on those piers at night, people come past, they would just get into conversation with them. And it's a really good place because people suffering from depression, literally contemplating suicide and that, they would go down there because it's a place to get away, you know. And they would just strike up a conversation, get talking to them, and then start witnessing to them. And that little ministry that they had going was really, really, really successful. And Matt said to me, "Hey, man, you've got to come with us. It's amazing what's going on." And I said, "No." I knew, I mean, if I went down there, my personality, people would have jumped. You know, I mean, come here, you know, I would have been the last straw that broke that camel's back. And it wasn't for me. For me, what I honestly believe and what I see the scripture saying to me personally, let your light so shine. Your lifestyle, what you do, not what you say. That's for me personally. But I do believe that there's place for both sides of that type of ministry. Verse 27. For I've not shunned to declare to the whole to you the whole counsel of God. Therefore, take heed to yourselves, to all the flock among which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to the shepherd of the church of God. Notice that he's recognizing their calling, right? Because he called for the elders. Now he turns around and he says, which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers. There's nothing there about their qualification. He is talking about the anointing. That they were chosen and anointed into that position by the Holy Spirit. Why? To shepherd the church of God. Which he purchased with his own blood. Jesus Christ purchased that church, that flock. It's not their flock. So their shepherding, it's not their own flock. Now, Jewish custom and tradition. When you were a shepherd and you're looking after somebody else's flock, this will throw us back to Jacob. It'll give you some insight into Jacob's personality, because Jacob at one point says to his uncle Laban, he says to Laban, when I was looking after your sheep and some went missing, I paid up on those sheep. You took it from my hand, from my pay, if you want to call it that, okay? But the custom of the shepherds back in those days was that if you were a shepherd and a wolf came in, or a bear or a lion came in, right, and took one of those sheep, you then went after that bear, that lion or whatever, you killed it, and you brought the ears back to the owner of the sheep. And by doing that, you were then exonerated. You didn't have to pay for the loss of that animal. Remember David with King Saul? And he puts that armor on and he says, I can't use this. I haven't tried this weaponry and armor and everything. And he takes his bow and that, and David says, Saul says to him, really? And he says, hold on a second. I'm just a boy, but I've killed the lion and the bear. That's what it's all about. That's what that reference is. It's amazing how this whole Bible ties together. You see stuff like that, it always just blows my mind. And so here, Paul, in what he's saying and building on his custom, these guys are elders, not their sheep. You don't have a right to butcher that sheep or to do anything with that sheep. You're called for a specific function, and that's merely to shepherd the sheep. The sheep belong to God, which Jesus purchased with his blood. Verse 39, for I know that after my departure, savage wolves will come in amongst you. Not might come in, they will come in. So Paul is warning this group of believers, this church, hey, when I go from here, the Judaizers are coming in. This is that group of men who made it their mission to go wherever the disciples went. And when they preached the good news, Jesus Christ is the Lord and Savior, and the resurrection, these guys would come in and say, okay, fair enough, we can go with that. Jesus did exist, we acknowledge that, but, and they start throwing in the law, circumcision and all those things, okay? So the wolves come in. It hasn't changed today at all. And then verse 30, I beg your pardon. Also from amongst yourselves men will rise up, speaking perverse things to draw away the disciples after themselves. So there's going to be people from outside of your church coming in, but there's also going to be people from within the church rising up, notice that, to draw away disciples after themselves. They're going to start preaching a gospel in order for them to get famous and for them to start drawing disciples. This was a very, very, very real problem that was here and happened almost immediately after this. We'll see now in history how many Jesuses, if that's a word, came on the scene and declared themselves to be the Messiah, the Christ. And they took people with them, and many Christians ended up getting killed because of this. They led revolts and all sorts of things, and the Romans slaughtered them. Verse 31, therefore, so in other words, because of these problems that are going to come, and because of what you should be as an elder in the church, because of these things, watch and remember that for 3 years I did not cease to warn everybody night and day with tears. So he's talking to them saying, hey guys, when these things happen, remember, man, I cried a lot of tears over you, and I've been warning you and warning you and warning you. Take heed and do something about it. Verse 52, so now, brethren, I commend you to God and to the word of his grace, which is able to build you up and give you an inheritance amongst all those who are sanctified. So, again, it's not going to be on you, it's not going to be on the pastor. It's not your position, he's saying to these men. It's not your position to keep these people in church. If these people want to stray and wander, yes, you have an obligation to go and witness to them and try and pull them back. You've got an obligation to protect them and everything, but they're not your sheep. These are God's sheep. This is God's problem. I heard a little thing the other night, and it said that this woman came home and this guy was just, man, he was just happy, bouncing around, and just carefree. What's going on? She said, well, I made a sound investment today, and I hired somebody on. And she's like, well, you don't own a company or anything. What did you hire on? He said, I hired this guy on, and he is going to do all my worrying for me. And he's going to take care of problems and that. Really? Yeah. How much for something like that, what did you agree to pay this guy? What have you gotten us into? And after every year, I pay this guy $1 million. But he's got to take care of everything. He's got to do the worries, taking care of the problems, sorting out, solving. $1 million. Where are we going to get $1 million? That's not my problem, that's his problem. We've got that person in our life. Verse 33, I have coveted no one's silver or gold or apparel. I haven't been paid for my ministry. I'm not asking to be paid. If I need to, I'll carry on working. At this point, Paul was not working. The church was funding him. So what he's saying is his needs are being met one way or the other. Verse 34, yes, you yourselves know that these hands have provided for my necessities and for those who are with me. So Paul is not only supporting his missionary journey, but he's making sure that the guys that he took with him, his disciples, are being covered. Verse 35, I have shown you in every way by laboring like this that you must support the weak. Funny how that switches around in the modern day church today. There was a lady that came through, she was actually from South Africa. She advertises herself as a prophet, and she's got this apostolic ministry, and she goes around to wherever she's invited, and when she goes around, she will lay hands on you, prophesy over you, and all this kind of stuff. And because she was from South Africa, the church that she went to, somebody met her and wanted to bring her over to come and introduce her to me, being from South Africa. They thought it would be neat, and this lady arrived. And she was telling, neat ministry. And I was skeptical of anything. So, she was telling me more about her ministry. I thought, that's very nice. So you just go from church to church, and I said, yeah. What do you do as far as income goes? How do you create a living if you're traveling all the time? Oh, no. They take up donations, and my needs are being met. Okay. At that point, I was totally switched off. And why? Because that's a biblical pattern. And for me, you're peddling the gospel right there. And if God puts you in a position where you are pastoring, say, a large church, or He puts you at some remote little village where you don't have the ability to make money, and people are sponsoring you, not because you are begging for it, I say fair enough. God's got that covered. But this thing of, I'm going to be a traveling evangelist and stuff like that, and I'm not going to pay my own way, I have a huge problem with that. I don't see that in Scripture. Then he says, and remember the words of the Lord Jesus, that He said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. That is the ministry there in a nutshell. So many of us want to get something out of it as opposed to verse 36. And when he had said these things, he knelt down and he prayed with them all. Then they all wept freely and fell on Paul's neck and kissed him, sorrowing most of all for the words which he spoke, that they would see his face no more. And they accompanied him to ship. So, at this point, if you just read it on the surface, it kind of looks weird in the sense that they kneel down and pray, then they all get into some holy kiss huddle, and then they fall on his neck. I don't know what's going on. It's just weird. No. There's an openness which Paul shows, and he's not afraid. Remember, the Christian faith right now at this point in time is under a lot of persecution. Now, Paul showed wisdom when he didn't get on the boat, not out of fear. That was wisdom that he didn't get on the boat and he decided to take the land route. But here, he's being open and he's kneeling down in public. He's not being governed by fear. And obviously these guys were very, very, very aware that Paul was going to get put to death. So now Paul, he's going to head on further south. And he's going from Asia Minor, he's heading further south on this missionary journey. He's still hell-bent on going to Jerusalem. And that's what he's off to. So chapter 21, now it came to pass that when we had departed from them and set sail, running a straight course, we came to Kos. The following day to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. And finding a ship sailing over to Phoenicia, we went aboard and set sail. So as I said, they're just heading south. When we had sighted Cyprus, we passed it on the left and sailed to Syria and landed at Tyre, for the ship was to unload its cargo. These ships, you're not talking about like the QE2 and that kind of thing. These aren't ships and cargo, passenger ships and cargo ships were typically the main thing, and it was the cheapest way to go as well. He's not flying first class, if you would. Now he gets to this port in Tyre, and Tyre's just north. It's north of Israel, and this city is a major sea and trade port. Okay, this is one of the major trade ports of the world in those days, and they were also. You can read about Tyre in the Old Testament, and there's some prophecies about it, but because they were so well fortified and because they were on the cutting edge on sailing and everything, they considered themselves pretty much indestructible. They were also, music spread from there out all over the world, so they had the arts and the culture, so they viewed themselves as very cultured, very secure, all the things that we kind of strive for and look for today, and as such, they've gotten way, way away from God. So this is where Paul ends up. And they're going to be dark there for 7 days. Now, for me, let's do verse 4 first. And finding disciples, we stayed there 7 days. So the first thing Paul does getting off the ship is he goes and finds disciples. Well, you can think about it. I mean, the sailors have got a bad name with their cussing and everything else. They are a rough bunch. Paul has just spent a whole lot of time on the ship with a bunch of sailors. He's getting off. He wants to be refreshed, and he goes to find some brothers. Interesting for us today. Well, I'm pulling into port. Let me go and relax. I'm tired from my long journey. Let me go and lay back on the beach. That's not Paul's calling, and that's not what he does. And in order to get refreshed, he goes and finds his brothers. But the brothers here, they told Paul through the Spirit not to go up to Jerusalem. Same message again. So he walks in, hey, brothers, and they turn around and say, hey, Paul, you're going the wrong way. Your brother will tell you you're going the wrong way. It's your enemy that doesn't tell you you're not. I had a young guy come to me this weekend, and he said, he came and it was interesting because he came and said to me, and he ummed and ahed for a while. And then eventually he said, I don't even know how to start. I said to him, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you my testimony. growing up. And when I'm done, then see if you're comfortable talking to me. And I sat down and I gave him my testimony. A bunch of stuff that I've been into, the answer, everything. When I got finished, I kind of looked up at him and he looked at me and said, well, mine's not that bad. And then he opened up, but one of the things, this kid opened up and he said, you know what, I'm really struggling with pornography. That, you know, it's something that I've battled with for a long time now, and I've tried stopping and I get back onto it. And I said, well, your parents, don't they watch and put controls in place and that? And he said, yeah. He said, but I know how to get around all that stuff. And so I listened to him for a while and I said to him, I can tell you exactly how to put a stop to it. Guaranteed. You going to pray for me? I said, yeah, we'll pray for you at the end, but that's not the deal. That's not what you need. I'll tell you how to put a stop to it. Kind of like if you come to me and you say to me, I've got a headache, and I give you a handful of ibuprofen and you put them in your pocket. I can pray for you all you want. Can God do a miracle? Yeah. Is he going to probably do a miracle? No, not really. You've got a solution right in your pocket. If you don't apply it, it's on you. Here's your solution to your pornography problem. When you get home, you go to mom and dad, you invite them into your bedroom, you sit them down, and you log on. You show them how you get around all of this. And you log on, and you turn around and you say, I've got a problem, I want help. That's going to sort your problem out right there and then. And he kind of looked at me and said, now you're probably thinking to yourself, man, I should have gone to one of the other counselors. He's like, yeah. I said, look, I love you enough, and I've dealt with this enough, to tell you the right way to go. If I didn't, I'd sugarcoat it and I'd say, yeah, we can pray and we can do this. And, you know, you can do the rosary once a day, or whenever you're feeling the urge to go on the internet, you can, you know, rub your cross, and you've got all these things. And I said, and now the next step to that is before you leave here, you pick up the phone, you can come to me and borrow my cell phone, and you phone your parents and you tell them, hey, I've got a problem with something I want to get off, and when I get home, I need to show you something and I need to talk to you. That way, when you get home, you're not going to chicken out. And he kind of looked at me. The next morning, I walked up to him, I stood up my phone, did you phone yet? No. And I lovingly bugged him for the weekend. And it's pretty neat because yesterday, when his parents picked him up, I went over to him, we just saying goodbye. And as we were saying goodbye, I just pulled out my phone and I looked at him. His parents were standing back, yeah. And I looked at him and he looked me straight in the eye and said, made up my mind, I'm talking to him as soon as we get home. That's a huge, huge step for a young man. And I mean, he said to me, man, what are they going to think? I said to him, if that was my boy, and he came to me and he said to me, Dad, I've got a problem and I want your help. For me, I would take my hat off to him. I wouldn't think bad of him, because that takes some serious guts to do. And it shows that you're serious. So, why we went there, I have no idea. So he met with his brothers, and the brothers straight out told him, don't go to Jerusalem. Okay, they had a prophetic word coming through, and they said, don't go. Verse 5, when we come to the end of those days, in other words, the 7 days that the ship was there, we departed and we went our way, and they all accompanied us with their wives and children. I've got that underlined in my Bible. There's no segregation in all of this. Oh, I can't go to church. Why? Because my kids got baseball. My kids got this. You know, we got a family day. Really? I'll talk to you about baseball and sports and everything else. At the end of the day, they're going to have pure needs and nothing else to show for it. That's what I've got. You might have a bunch of trophies and stuff like that. And so what? At the end of the day, if you haven't been going to church and you've been going to sports and that, you're going to have sore knees and you're going to have a ticket to hell. What's more important? So they basically went down to the dock till we were out of the city, and we knelt down on the shore and prayed. So here is where Luke separates himself from Paul. Okay, because look at the verbiage.
and we knelt down. Paul's on the boat, and he's with those others that accompanied Paul down. When we'd taken our leave of one another, we boarded the ship, and they returned home. That's where we're going to stop today. Verse 6. It's amazing how Paul's little missionary journey can speak so pointedly to our own lives and really just question our own walk. And like I said earlier on, this Bible's not easy at all. It's not thought to be easy. Paul at one point talking about resisting temptation, he turns around and says, so have you resisted unto blood? You know, you'll get Christians, oh, it's just tempting me, it's this, it's that, and Paul's in your face about it. He says, yeah, you're talking about temptation. Have you even tried resisting to the point that you're bleeding? There's not much compassion with Paul. I like it. All right, let's pray. Father God, we thank you.